All right, guys, so here's my 4-pound ball. And if you notice, I'm definitely starting it in sort of this gumdrop, grimacy shape because I'm gonna cone it up, and it's a lot easier to cone it up when it's already begun to be in this shape. If we start with something flat, you're more likely to get sort of that volcano that might accidentally put an air bubble in there. So I already start with it in the shape of a cone, just a definitely different cone than what I'm gonna do to make it centered. So when I'm dealing with a slightly larger, bigger clay, I don't start with the wheel super fast. I want to start just by controlling the clay that's on the bottom. I'm gonna make it stick. Remember, I always keep my hand here. If I just do this to make it stick, it has the ability to go wherever it wants. By keeping your wall hand here and then squishing down, you're less likely to get it out of control. So I start with it going about medium speed, and I'm just gonna start to cone up. And one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they'll start to pull the clay up with the bottoms of their hands, and that's gonna drag the clay over the center and create that volcano. But if we just push with our left palm towards our forefingers in 2 spaces and squeeze towards the middle, the clay will go up by itself, and then you're gonna follow it up into a cone. So you're literally oozing the clay through your hands to force it to go up. Now that we've got this cone, again, I don't care if the cone is centered. That's not my my concern. My concern is to break this 4-pound ball into 1 pound, 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds. So now from up here, the wheel's gonna go a little faster, and I'm just gonna start to cone down. Not really quickly, I work on each section at a time. So now that 1/2 pound is centered. I'm gonna go down a little bit more. And notice that it's not really staying a cone shape because my left hand is starting to come out a little bit to create this sort of mound. Then when I get down to the bottom, I'm just gonna hang out for a bit. Pushing with my left hip. I don't actually have a brick under my left foot, but if I did, it would give me a little more leverage. So my left foot is actually on my toes. I'm just too lazy to go get a brick. I figured it was 7:30 in the morning here in New Jersey and nobody was here, and I don't like to do my videos when people are here, so I figured let me throw one together real quick for you guys. So I'm just sort of hanging out here. My left palm's pushing the clay in the center, telling it I want it to be about 5-6 inches wide. My top hand is holding steady up here to say that I'm going to be about this high, because if you've watched my other videos, I'm not very good at size and distance, so let's just say this high. And my left fingers are serving as a rib. So if I start to get sort of those bumps and those ripples, I'll hold my fingers at an angle and use the stem of them to sort of push them in. I don't use my fingers because then I get more fingerprints. And I don't invite the pinky because then the pinky is gonna create that ridge underneath. I just sort of have my fingers at an angle and I push in all the fat parts so that they fill in the lower parts. And there we go. Now I also always start with it sort of at a right angle to the back. That will help stop me from leaving too much clay down on the bottom when I start to pull. Now when I'm making a bowl, I kind of want to start with the width of the clay the same as what I want the width of the bottom of the bowl. So this is going to build the bowl from here, from here, from here, and then at the end, I'm going to really bowl it out. So with 4 pounds of clay, I'm going to use slightly bigger tools, which means I'm not going to use 1 thumb, I'm not going to use 2. I'm going to use the stems of my fingers to open it up. Now, I believe that bowls should have good feet, and I'll do this as a video after. So when I start to go down, I want to leave 3/4 of an inch. What? 3/4 of an inch? That's craziness, Mel. Not really. If I want a good 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 to 1/4 of an inch of foot, I also need to leave room for the wall of the clay, of the pot, and the wire tool. So I'm gonna go down here with my pin tool, and if you look there, that is about 3/4 of an inch. One of the few sizes I'm good at remembering. All right, so now I've got sort of this V shape hanging out on the inside of my clay, and that's gonna allow me to get all those fingers in there. So to make this sort of fruit bowl, I want room for that fruit to sit next to each other. I don't want the apples stacked on top of each other. I want them next to each other. So I'm gonna go in with 2 to 3 fingers, all the same length, and I'm gonna pull towards me. There's 1 apple, there's 2 apples. clay's gonna go a little wonky, don't worry about it. We can sort of recenter that. And I'm gonna go ahead and compress that floor. And if you'll notice, I actually use 2 hands. I'm using all these fingers and then these fingers, and I'm just sort of dragging towards me. I don't feel it necessary to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And one of the important parts is whenever you decide to do anything, you decide immediately if you're gonna do a cylinder or a bowl. So the inside of my pot is rounded. I did buy an overhead stand that I've just not been able to set up yet, but I promise soon, I swear. I just opened a 3rd studio here in New Jersey, in Montclair, and it turns out 3 studios are a little harder than 2. All right, guys, so now my wheel is going super fast. I'm gonna start to slow down, and now I'm gonna start to pull my walls. Super important. We're gonna start on the inside and come up, straight up. We don't wanna go out. We don't wanna yell out. Remember, the minute you put your clay on the wheel's like, yes, we're gonna make a bowl. And then you're gonna end up with a plate. So we wanna stop that centripetal force, and we wanna almost aim for a cylinder with a bowl inside of it. Super wet, slow down my wheel a little bit to scoop up some clay here on the bottom. And my first pull, I'm gonna go even pressure inside, even pressure outside, and a lot less pressure on the lip. Remember, with bowls, we wanna keep that lip a little thicker. That lip is gonna stop it from warping. That lip is gonna stop it from chipping, and that lip is just gonna look better. It's gonna kind of give you a little bit of a frame between the floor that it's sitting on, or the table, and the top. Slow down just a little bit. I'm gonna scoop up some clay, play that line of the song a few extra times. I'm gonna start to go out. Notice I'm starting to insinuate bowl a little bit more, but I'm not going past that sort of vertical axis, because the minute I start to go out, it's very hard to thin the walls going horizontally, fighting against that centripetal force. And my goal is to get my walls as thin as I can, thinner here and thicker here, because when I stretch it, this has to come out here. And if this is 1/8 of an inch here and it comes out here, it's gonna be 1/16 of an inch, which is definitely not strong enough. Start down here again, put a little bit more pressure on my inside hand as I'm pulling, thinning out those walls. The minute my hands can touch, I take my thumb out and I touch that other hand. Now, that's looking a little urn-like, but that's okay, because I'm gonna fix that when I yell bowl. Yell bowl. All right, so now I would say that my walls are as thin as I'd like them to be. I've got a nice curve on the inside, which I'll show you guys. Again, overhead camera is coming. I'm gonna do that carefully so that gravity doesn't mess up my ball there, my bowl. Hopefully you saw that. Okay. Now that, oh, yeah, a little wonky there. I'll go ahead and fix that. So to fix it, I'm just gonna sort of keep my hands as still as possible. Just take that wiggly and just keep my hands still. And that's gonna hopefully get it back into shape. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to yell bowl. So this is where I'm going to take my rib. I don't have the black rib that I like, the Kemper rib, but that's okay. This one has a hole in it. I'm a big fan of the hole. Pardon me if I had the time, if I wasn't so crazy, I would drill holes in all my black Kemper ribs. But for now, I'm just going to use this rubbery rib. No idea where it came from. Community studios, things just appear. Now, a lot of videos are going to show you to start at the bottom, and I don't start at the bottom because when you're on the bottom, you can put a whole bunch of pressure. And then all of a sudden you hit the wall and you go, ooh, I can't put that much pressure, but it's too late. Your brain hasn't really caught it before it happened. So that's when you end up with sort of that beginner bump. So if you start at the top, you're gonna start with less pressure. And starting with less pressure, you can control what you're doing. And then when you get to the bottom, you go, oh, now I can put more pressure. And I'll stop that from happening. So we're gonna keep our sponge out here because that's where I want my bowl to end up. I'm gonna hold on to my rib. Elbows are on my legs at all time. I'm gonna push that lip up to that sponge, and then I'm gonna start to travel down. And I'm gonna stretch that clay up against that sponge as far as I think it can go. Now, I was talking so much I forgot to wet the rib, so we got a little sticky. So now I'm actually gonna start down on the bottom again, And now I'm putting a lot of pressure. Now I know where it starts to get thin. I'm going to start to travel up until the rib completely comes off of the bowl. Yeah, a little wonky there, but you know what? No one can tell your bowl's wonky unless it's on a wheel turning in circles. So as long as you don't put your bowl on a lazy Susan, you're good. All right, now, one of the things that people tend to do is look at their outside of their bowl. Now, that's fine, you know, that's all good, but what we'll tend to care about is the profile down here. But the truth is, you're going to trim that. So when I make my bowl, I care about what's going on the inside, because that I don't trim. No one in my studio is allowed to trim the inside of their bowls. I'm very old school that way. Yeah, you're just not allowed. So if there's a little bit of a bump on the bottom here on the outside, I don't care, because I'm going to trim that. But I don't want to care so much about the outside that the inside gets that little ripple. So I want to make sure my inside is smooth, and if I have a little ripple on the outside on the bottom, it's okay, because I can trim that. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give myself a little bit of a lip. I'm a big fan of actually defining the lip on your bowl. If it's a flip or a line or just this little sort of rib, this loop of clay that I put on top, that's fine too. And I'm gonna compress the floor a little bit. Now here's the other part about making a bowl is when you use your wood tool with a cylinder, you're gonna go straight up and down. With this, I'm gonna go this way and sort of at an angle. It's super important to get off just enough so that you can lift it off. But remember also, you want that mark, that cut to be straight, because you're gonna use that to help you center. And if you're not straight about it, it's going to be hard to see because you have all these little chachas kind of hanging out on the sides. And it's going to make it difficult. Sometimes when my bowl is kind of low profile like this, I won't even bother trying to take off the excess. I'll do it later. Right? Why mess up? But for the sake of this, I'm going to go in there and get it off. Oh, and it almost hit the side of my pot. Now I can't find it. There it is. All right, cool. Awesome. So if you wanted to, there are a couple things you can do. You go in with your knuckle and make that sort of swirly. I tend to do that if I can't really get the inside looking nice, I'll fake it. So and say, why do you put the swirl? I go, to hide the mistakes. All right, so there it is. There's my 4-pound bowl. I think it's maybe about 8 inches wide, 9 inches wide by about 6 inches high. Again, really bad at size and distance, so I'm not really sure. I'm gonna clean it up a little. Now remember, this little thick lip here is going to act like this sort of plastic rib piece of loop of clay on the top of your bucket. If you go to Home Depot and you got these cool buckets, when we lift this up, this thing of plastic right here is what keeps this round. If you ever notice when you get a crack, it tends to not be as structured. That's the same thing with your bowl. People say, why did my bowls warp? Well, there's a couple things. When you took it off, maybe you didn't wait for it to be kind of set up and you squeezed it on the sides. Maybe your lip just wasn't thick enough. Maybe when you put your bat down, you left it sort of slanted like that. Because bats, although they're wood, they still have a little bit of flexibility. So when you do that, your bowl can possibly do this and you won't see it till the very end. I'm a big fan. I think the thick lip is what really keeps it from warping. So that's it. That's my video on a 4-pound bowl. Stay tuned for trimming this guy. Have a great day. Remember to follow us on the Instagram, Mud Clay Studio NJ, and call it a pot with underscores in there. And remember, follow me, subscribe, and write down on the bottom what videos you might want to see. Have a great day.